This week on Quality Digest Live, we found out what happens when competition meets cooperation.
Plus, what's the number one thing that great leaders need? We'll tell you when we come back.
This week's sponsor of Quality Digest Live is 360 Performance Circle, your destination for today's best training tools. Streaming online now.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for July 11th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Well, we're going to kick off the show this week by returning to a continuing story that we've covered a few times over the past year. Last July, the National Institute of Standards and Technology launched an interesting experiment, the Net Zero Energy Residential Test Facility, better known by its lilting acronym NZRTF. I think I pronounced that properly. NZRTF. I think that's what it is. The all-electric test house was designed to measure whether a virtual family of four could live there and consume less energy than the house produced over the course of a year. Well, the results are in, and the test house passed with flying colors. In fact, the house, which is actually part house and part laboratory, generated an excess energy of 491 kilowatt hours, which is enough energy to power an electric car from New York to Chicago and back. A typical four-person household in that part of Maryland, where the test house was constructed, would normally spend more than $4,000 annually on their energy bill, so the savings here are very significant. The catch is that, according to NIST economist Joshua Neifel, that the construction cost for such a home, which includes things like solar panels, added insulation, triple pane windows, and other upgrades and technologies to help achieve the net zero energy performance, are quite high. Neifel estimates that these upgrades would add more than $160,000 to the price of the home. So even if you're saving $4,000 a year in energy expenses, it's going to take 40 years to earn back the value of that. So. Yeah. You know, that's not, obviously it's not cheap. I mean, you need to balance the kind of the good of the society versus the out of pocket there and figure out if that's going to make sense or not. Right,
but I mean, I suspect what's going, well, we know part of this is already happening is that costs for, let's say, solar panels are coming down. A lot of these energy saving things, the cost is coming down because more and more people are embracing them, so manufacturing volume's going up, the cost is coming down, that sort of thing. But I think the other thing that you can see is a lot of that expense also is, I think, I'm suspecting, is new contractors learning new ways of how do you construct this type of home. And I think there's a learning curve in there which is probably adding to the labor expense. And I suspect that'll come down as well. So I know part of what they're trying to do is, okay, how do we get this down from 160,000 to something that's a little bit more manageable. And then also, you know, the other thing is there may not be an option in this. I mean, certain states, California, where we are being one of them, are you know, moving forward with plans that this is going to be mandatory in some way. In the future, we believe that people are going to have some of these things built into their homes in order to reduce their use to the grid. You know, reduce your reliance on the grid and be able to maybe pump some energy back into the grid if you can, depending on how amped up your house is to handle these things. So interesting. I think this is kind of one of those wave of the future things that we're seeing here. Well, you said something also. You also said something interesting that I think is also going to occur, is that I think people, if they have the money, will do this just to do it. In other words, it's kind of like the hybrid cars and the electric cars. It's like, well, am I really saving that much more money? Well, it's been shown that probably not right now. But I think a lot of people are buying electric cars or buying these things to kind of support the movement and get some traction in there, because you've got more people investing money in it and buying the products, and that's going to drive the technology.
A couple of things. First of all, it's a personal branding thing. You know, if you're driving a Volt or a Leaf, you know, that you're saying something about who you are.
Supposed to ride in your Escalade.
Right, exactly. The other thing about this is it kind of connects in a way. Just saying. It kind of connects in a way to the Internet of Things. I mean, we've heard about smart homes, right, and being part of the Internet of Things, where, you know, that's going to be part of this too. Where if you forget to turn off your your heater or your AC, your house will do it for you, or you can do it remotely from your car, right? I mean, so all this stuff is intended to allow people to begin to almost unconsciously or subconsciously save energy and conserve and be more energy efficient, and that's good. That's good stuff. So we're going to see more of that definitely going forward. So to check out the rest of the list and also to see the rest of the pieces that Dirk and I are going to be covering on today's show, be sure to check out the story links right below the video player screen. Right down there.
Right down there. Okay, so you know it's kind of interesting to look at how business has changed in the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years or so. Let's say pre-internet, business was pre-internet business was pretty, I don't know, cutthroat. Even nice companies, really, if you think about it, were all about beating the competition in any legal, ethical way possible. You know, it's always been kind of an us versus them or us versus brand X. That still exists, of course, but there are many new models that are kind of blurring the lines of competition. And Taryn March, our editor here, touched on a few of those in her article, The Murky Productive World of Coopetition, What Happens When Competition and Cooperation Join Forces. Taryn touched on a couple of key elements in today's capitalism, a couple of key trends. For one, you have the idea of a collaborative economy. And if you haven't heard of that, it's another name for it is peer-to-peer economy. And all of us most likely kind of join in on this. A peer-to-peer economy or collaborative economy is one where everyone is a supplier, everyone is a seller, everyone is a distributor, everyone is perhaps even an advertiser, and all of this enabled really by, let's say, the internet. So think eBay or Craigslist or Uber or even just homebrew entrepreneurs selling stuff directly on their website. It's people offering services and goods directly to each other via some sort of enabling technology. So that's peer-to-peer. Now, obviously, companies have noticed this, including, let's say, Amazon and Google. And by the way, Amazon and Google are more akin to your old school companies, traditional companies, than, let's say, Uber or Craigslist or TaskRabbit. They are simply electronic storefronts for existing companies. So, writes Taryn, traditional companies are figuring out ways to collaborate with other collaborative companies and therefore also with consumers. So you'll see partnerships, for instance, between innovative manufacturer Quirky and General Electric, between transportation network startup Uber and General Motors, and online outsourcer TaskRabbit, who we already mentioned, and Walgreens. In other words, traditional companies want to work with these peer-to-peer businesses in order to expand their own market. Now, for me personally, that's getting a little too cozy. It kind of waters down the, I don't know, kind of the joy, the gestalt of the peer-to-peer aspect. But there's also a slightly different take on this going on, and it's what's called co-opetition. That's where companies with similar needs share needed resources or services. They are cooperating with each other, even though at some point they are going to be in direct competition, or if not direct competition, at least in some way competing for the same market. So coopetition creates value for the companies involved by leveraging cooperative relationships, such as, let's say, a shared research and development cost in order to create a product or a service. The competition resumes after the companies seek to allocate market share and other finite benefits from what they've already co-developed, right? So they develop a product, now they become competitors, but part of that co-development involves them working with each other. So an example of this, kind of a inkling of an example of this is the healthcare industry. So to keep costs down while still meeting the mandates of HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, insurers banded together to create MedUnite, which is now part of Caperio. It's an internet-based revenue cycle management system that shares medical administrative tasks. So while still competing in the marketplace, insurers are cooperating to cut operating costs and meet shared requirements. Another example of this, I think, is what Ryan Day covered last week when he talked about a partnership between Ford Motor Company and Samsung SDI to develop lightweight, highly advanced lithium-ion batteries for Ford's hybrid and electric vehicles. We don't know the specifics, but we might assume that R&D costs are shared between Ford and Samsung SDI, and that at some point any battery technology advancements that come out of this would not only benefit Ford, but Samsung as well. And at some point, it's not inconceivable, in my mind anyway, that they become competitors on the battery market,
sure.
Right? It makes sense. I mean, Ford's going to get something out of it, but they're going to, at some point, Samsung may want to sell batteries into the hybrid electric car environment, right? So at some point, they become competitors. For all this to work, of course, you have to trust the people you're cooperating with. And this is where I think we are seeing big strides in business. It is possible to be competitors and yet still work together to lower costs. We're going to talk a little bit further about this next week, or there's going to be a story next week that I'm writing about something I ran across with Hexagon Metrology at the Hexagon Live show in Las Vegas, where Hexagon Metrology Worldwide CEO Norbert Hanke and Al Peasland of the Infinity Red Bull Formula One racing team have a partnership going on, and it's not. There's the traditional aspect of it where they're sharing technology and tech feedback back and forth going on between them, but they're also sharing important aspects of each other's culture. Mm-hmm. And that is something you're going to see more and more, where corporations are learning, are trying to learn from each other something about what makes them a successful company. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that boils down to culture. A successful culture often leads to a successful business. So what can you learn from the culture? And this goes far beyond just what you're gaining from each other, maybe technologically and so forth. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more next week. But in any case, what we're wrapping up here is that there's a lot of changes going on in the corporate world, how organizations are working with each other. And it's a lot different than it was 30 or 40 years ago. And it's probably for the better. People are learning that if you cooperate, you can actually gain something on the bottom line that goes beyond simply the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, to me it's analogous maybe to like a supermarket. I mean, the internet to me is analogous to a supermarket. I mean, you want a place where as many consumers as possible are going to gather to have choices. And in order for them to have choices, you got to kind of work together with your competition to all get on the shelves at the same time, right? So, right. I mean, you want to give the people their choice. Now, you still want them to choose you, but you have to work together to get in front of them properly. And the internet is really that way.
This is similar to what Tesla is doing, by the way.
Tesla's doing the same thing. Yeah, it's very similar. And, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I think that we're going to see, all of us in our business are going to see that we have to adapt to this in a certain way, and then we have to understand that our user group, as much as we want to talk about that, you know, people that are devoted to us and are loyal to us, are going to hop around a lot. And you know, you want to be available to them, and you want to make sure you're available to them, and that means really probably coopetition, right, to a large extent, is understanding how to get in front of people in that way. Yep. So good stuff. Good story about Karen. Thank you for covering there, Dirk. We appreciate that. Okay. Well, good. Well, we have another interesting story here that we covered this week, and we've been covering for a few weeks. One of our favorite topics around here is the importance of efficient and effective management. And as we know, great leaders help create an environment in which performance excellence can flourish. The Quality Digest contributor who, in my opinion, best supports this view is Jack Dunnigan. In his varied and impressive career as a business owner, consultant, writer, and a lot more, Dunnigan has emphasized through personal example the critical importance of great leadership. Dunnigan's latest series of articles, Qualities of a Superlative Leader, looks at the traits that define true leadership. His three-part overview on the trait of intelligence, which we just covered, ran in Quality Digest over the past 2 weeks and concluded in yesterday's issue. There's a lot of interesting perspectives and good solid advice to be found in these articles. So to take a deeper look at this, we're very pleased now to be joined via audio by the man himself, Jack Dunnigan. Jack, welcome to our show.
Hi, Mike and Dirk. Glad to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you there, Jack. Thank you for joining us again to talk about this. And let's kind of dive right into it. We hear all the time, I think, about the difference between formal education and what we all refer to as street smarts, so-called street smarts. What do you think great leaders get from each of those two approaches?
If I start with a story, when I graduated from college and moved to my location when I had my first job, the very first morning, I remember I got up and I walked outside and I said out loud to no one in particular, I said, I have no idea what I'm going to do here. I had loads of information, lots of information. But what I didn't know or didn't understand how to apply that information in real life settings and situations. And so that's where the two come together. I think it's critical for superlative leaders to really be able to have a basis of knowledge and information. They're almost always widely read in college or in their educational process. Somehow they are always gathering more information. But street smarts, as it is the in-house real-life application of that information to get things done, to make things happen. Great leaders, superlative leaders, are people who get things done. They don't talk about it only. They don't write reports about it. They don't even surmise. They take information and make something happen with it. In formal education, you learn the processes. You learn how to study, and you learn how to meet the requirements of the course and fulfill obligations and meet deadlines. All of that's valuable skills to have in school. But when you get out, you learn that you may have thought you're brilliant, but your competitors may not have that same opinion, or your boss. And so you need to learn how to satisfy the needs in a real-life setting. I advocate both. You need lots of education, and always education. You need to be able to do something too. And I've been writing now that the next facet is on competence. What is it you can actually do with the information that you have?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And talking about kind of book learning and history, you're a fan of history, obviously. Your columns are sprinkled with quotes and references from people like Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, Robert E. Lee, and Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry. That's right. So I think understanding the past and seeing it through the lens of the current situation obviously benefits leaders. But do you think that maybe one can be handicapped by being maybe too reflective, too past looking?
Yes, you can, because the circumstances and situations in which those leaders of the past have existed don't exist anymore. You were mentioning in the earlier segment how that the marketplace has changed, business has changed. I work with a local SCORE chapter, and all of those guys in SCORE are people who have run successful companies, Macy's and Hershey's and companies like that. But the business as it exists today is very different than what they learned. They had no internet at all. The importance of understanding history, for me, that's why I mostly read, I like it, is because it's reassuring. I know that other people have walked this path too, and they've learned some things, and most of them are quite frank. We can look back on history and see the errors they made and somehow feel a little bit better because they turned out to be superlative leaders in spite of mistakes along the way. And I suppose that the best way to sum up a very strong personal opinion, a sense of self-esteem, is life is mostly characterized by the phrase, "It seemed like a good idea at the time." And so we did things because we thought it was the right thing to do at the time, and hopefully we learn from it. But you don't want to get too concerned about yourself, because life is not about you. It's about the context in which you exist and the people that you are wanting to have an impact on. Leading. They want to create change. They want to do things. And as a result of that, we learn from the past, but we live now, and we're heading to the future.
Hey, Jack, one of the traits that you talk about, that you refer to, is self-restraint, which I guess around here we didn't automatically associate with intelligence. How does that factor connect with intelligence, and how does it help leaders lead?
Well, politics is a good example of that. When you've got one scandal after another, and I'm talking about usually they're sex scandals, where somebody gets caught in something they shouldn't be doing, and we say, boy, that was stupid. And so when you have stupid behavior, that's the opposite of intelligent behavior. And smart people know consequences of imprudent behavior. Superlative leaders know that people are looking at them, they are looking to them, and they serve in a symbolic role as well as the role of a spokesperson, the role of a demagogue in the right sort of way. They stir up emotions and passions and ideas, and you can screw all of that up simply by doing things you shouldn't do. Just because one has the liberty or the power or the authority doesn't mean they should do it. And that's what I mean by self-restraint. You just learn there are limits to my office, there are limits to my power, there are limits to my authority, and there are cautions about blowing it, because you can certainly do it pretty easy. Therefore, intelligent people know, I'm going to stay away from that. I'm not doing that.
Well, Jack, that actually leads in very well to my next question for you, because, you know, we talk a lot about the importance of leadership in general in an organization. We hear a lot about things like flat organizations. Holacracy is the new term Zappos is using a lot now, where, you know, it's flat. There's a lot of ideas that there really isn't going to be a hierarchy in organizations today. But, you know, Jack, what do you think about the benefits of hierarchy? What do you see as the importance, perhaps, of the old-fashioned top-down approach? How does that work?
When I do workshops, I'll divide the classroom up into teams of 4 or 5 people. And then I'll give them an assignment to do that requires the involvement of everybody in each group. And after several minutes, enough time to do the job, I'll call them back together. If there is a natural leader in that group, something will have happened. They will have been able to summarize exactly what needs to be done. They will detail who's going to do what. They will make relative assignments. They'll gather all the pieces together, and they'll come up with it. If there is no natural leader, nothing happens. Or if there are 2 or more leaders, first of all, they're going to fight it out in a nice way to see who's going to actually lead. We seem to be genetically wired to look to some person, someone, for the point as a catalyst, the point of action for us. And so whether you have a flat organization or not, it almost always still boils down to somebody there being the spark plug to make things happen. And there are times when, you know, the sort of X style of mandating leadership works, but that's usually only on crisis times. It's efficient, it's not very effective. And so if you want to be effective, we're not really concerned about planning, organizing, training, and controlling as much as we are planning, organizing, training, and coordinating the work of all the people around us, because what I want to get done as a leader is a lot bigger than what I'm able to do myself. But I'm going to try and make it happen.
Well, Jack, that's a great point. It's a good one to leave it on. We kind of blew through that time real quick. It was interesting chatting with you. We want to do it again soon, though. So I know you're going to continue to contribute to Quality Digest, so we'll have you back on the show sometime soon.
Yeah, really appreciate your articles.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
okay,
Jack.
Thanks,
we'll
Jack.
talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Good stuff there by Jack Dunnigan. Leadership, we always like leadership. You know, I mean, I think it's important.
He's a good writer, too.
A great writer. And yeah, if you haven't checked out Jack's stuff, as Dirk always says, you can always go out to our search box and type in content by Jack Dunnigan with 1 N. And, well, 2 N's actually, but 1 in the middle, not 2 in the middle. Jack Dunnigan. And type that into the search box, and you'll get all of Jack's stuff. A lot of good stuff there from Jack. Okay, great. Well, Dirk, you have a tech corner now. We're going to let you scurry thousands of microns away and go check that one out. This is from our good friends at Creaform. We've done a few different tech corners with Creaform over the course of time. This is their GoScan 20, which is an interesting new product from Creaform, and Dirk's going to take a look at it right now. So, Dirk, take it away.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike. As you said, we were going to look at another product from Creaform. We looked at a product from Creaform a couple weeks ago. It was the Handy Scan, which was a laser scanner. Today we're going to look at the GoScan 20. It is part of 2 products. So there's a GoScan 20 and a GoScan 50. We'll get to the difference between them in just a few minutes. But rather than a laser scanner, the GoScan is a structured white light scanner. And if you don't know how those work, let me show you really quick kind of what the deal is. We'll go to the gauge cam here. And looking at, get this centered here. Here we go. Basically what you've got is you've got a projector here in the middle. And what this does is this projects a pattern onto the object that you're measuring. And that pattern wraps around any features, you know, conforms to whatever the object is. And that deformation is being recorded by 2 cameras, actually 3 cameras in this case. We're doing a triangulation method, right? So you've got a pattern that's projected onto the part. You've got 2 cameras, monochrome cameras, and 1 color camera. Now, this is the difference between this GoScan and the old GoScan that we covered about a year ago. The old GoScan was monochrome. The new GoScans are color. Now, there's a couple other things going on with the new GoScans. They're lighter, they're more rugged, they're faster. That's in conjunction with the VX Elements software, and they're still available in black. Sorry about that. What we're going to show you right now is actually how we're going to do a scan. Now, as we've shown you with other Creaform scan products, the Handy Scan and the Go Scan, you don't need to fixture. I could just hold this, take the scanner, take my part, sit there and scan this. That is possible to do. With a smaller object, it gets to be a problem because you tend to get your hands in there. Also notice, if we go back to the gauge cam here, there are no targets on this. I shouldn't say there's one target, but basically what the scanner is looking for is the actual features. So as it's scanning, it is collecting the data, the scan data, from the object, comparing it in real time to the geometry of the features that it has already collected, and it is stitching those together in real time with no targets. Now this works as long as you have a lot of features on there. If you don't have a lot of features, then you would have to put targets on there in order to kind of assist the scan. But with the new Go Scan, there's also what they call texture. They're measuring color as well, texture or color, so that if there's any color variation on the part, that is also being used to help in the alignment, so that the cameras are seeing not only the geometry of the part, but also any color variation, and that color goes in there along with the geometry to help in the alignment. The side effect of that, of course, is your finished scan also happens to be in color instead of monochrome, and we'll see that in just one second. So let's go ahead and do a scan. I'll show you what this looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and start my scan. And I've set this down on a table just to make life easier on me. And I'm going to go ahead and start collecting some scan data here. Now, if we go to the software screen, we can see that it is constructing our scan. So remember what's happening here in real time. As I'm taking scan data, the scan data is coming into VX Elements, and is being aligned in real time with the previous scan data. So without any targets, it's actually building up this 3D model. Now the other thing that we pointed out a couple weeks ago, and that is one of the key things that Creaform likes to point out, is that you're going direct to mesh. There is no point cloud. There is no alignment required. There's no post-processing required. Once I'm done with this scan, I can, if I want it, simply export the mesh as, let's say, an STL file and bring that right into maybe a 3D printer or some other piece of software. I can do whatever I want with it because essentially at that point it's done. Now the other thing I want to point out is if you notice on the left-hand side of the software screen, you see a little green bar. That's an indication of my standoff distance. I want to be working about 15 inches from the surface as I'm scanning. If I get too close, that little green bar is going to turn red. If I get too far away, it's going to turn blue. And that's my visual indication that I'm at the right working distance for this object that I'm scanning. And let me just scan a little bit more here, make sure I kind of get all the nooks and crannies. And in just one second here, I'll tell you the difference between the Go Scan 20 and the Go Scan 50. It's subtle, but important. Okay, we'll say that that scan is probably good enough. I'm going to go ahead and stop the scan. Now, while that's rendering, the difference between the Go Scan 20 and the Go Scan 50 really is the field of view and the resolution. So the Go Scan 50 has a resolution of up to 500 microns, but it has a field of view of about 15 by 15 inches. So it's scanning a fairly large area at a time. The Go Scan 20 looks at a much smaller area, maybe about 4 by 6, 5 by 6, something like that. So it's scanning a smaller area, but it can scan at up to 200 microns resolution. So 500 microns for the Go Scan 50, 200 microns for the Go Scan 20. They both have an accuracy of about 100 microns. Our scan is done here, so if we go back and we take a look, I'm going to filter out some of the extraneous stuff here. There we go. And you see we've got our completed 3D scan, and it's in color. And I just want to show you something here. If we kind of compare this to our, let me see if I can kind of arrange them in the same way. If we go back to our, let me see if I can orient that. Okay, that's about like that. Yeah, if we switch between the two, you can see we're capturing color, and we've got this nice 3D scan in color. Now the typical use for this, kind of the market that Creaform saying they really kind of target this toward is, let's say, prototyping, video games, cinema, art. One of their customers was actually Cirque du Soleil, who actually used it, I believe, to scan people in order for the creation of costumes. So this is really a product where you need to get a scan quickly. It doesn't have to be super high resolution, 500 microns, 200 microns, depending on the scanner. And you want to be able to do that scan, export it, and get it out to somebody to use immediately. It might be simply as simple as sending it to a 3D printer. So remember, we finished the scan. That only took a few seconds, right? To convert that, took me a couple minutes to scan it. Remember, it's already a mesh. So all I have to do is say save mesh. It's going to do a couple of last minute little calculations here. It's going to give me the option of what kind of file I want to save it as, STL or something else. And that's the end of it. I'm done. I send it out and I am good to go. So again, what we've been looking at is the GoScan 20. The other product is the GoScan 50. These are structured white light scanners. If you want more information on these, all you have to do is go to the link below the player page, click it, and that will take you right out there to the GoScan page where you can look up either one of those. So once again, thanks to the folks at Creaform for sending this on to us. And that's it. Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Dirk. Well, there it is, the GoScan 20, as you say, from Creaform, our good friends at Creaform. It's always good to have that done by you, Dirk, as you walk back over.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, hello. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Dirk, for doing that. Thank you, Creaform, for actually giving us that. We've done a few of those for Creaform products, and really neat stuff from them always.
Well, scanners are fun, and this one, like you said, is interesting in particular just because it is kind of this scan and go. Their main thing that they're pushing on this is that there's no necessity for doing any kind of post-processing. You can just use that scan right out of there once you're done. So it's pretty cool.
Cool stuff. Great. All right. Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Creaform. All right. Well, that's our show. Before we go, we'd like to offer one more thank you to today's sponsor, 360 Performance Circle, a new kind of training company with handsomely produced streaming video content covering lean, quality, and best practices within test and measurement. 360 Performance Circle is your destination point for the best training on the web. For more information, check out the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
That's right. And thank you to all of you guys for joining us. Also to Jack Dunnigan for joining us via Skype, and also to Creaform, of course, for sending out products for us to look at. Next week, we're going to be looking at a product from Fluke. So if you're interested in thermal imaging, take a look. Next week, we will be looking at a thermal imager and actually a couple other little bells and whistles that come with that from Fluke.
Yep, so look forward to that. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week for Quality Digest Live on Friday and QDD starting on Monday. So we'll see you then.
So long. Bye.
Thank you.